In the winter of 1942, as America waged war abroad, Brooklyn welcomed a restless baby named Lewis Allen Reed, though the world would one day know him as Lou Reed, the man who fused art and rebellion into some of the rawest rock ever unleashed. He was born on March 2nd in a corner of Brooklyn Hospital to Toby Reed and his wife, who quickly discovered they had an odd temperamental child on their hands. Young Lou, as relatives soon called him, was a swirl of moods and demands. He could be sweet, even fragile, one moment, and then fling into fury if people thwarted his whims. Over time, Lou's father built up a fortress of rules in the household, convinced that discipline would mold him into a respectable boy. It didn't. Lou's streak of defiance only thickened. By the time he was old enough to form a memory, he was already forging an identity as a rebellious contrarian. In school, that contrarian spirit morphed into a taste for taboo. Despite his future reputation as an avant-garde pioneer, Reed started out dabbling in doo-wop. Imagine him as a scrawny teen in New York, not yet in black leather or droning electric guitars, but fronting a small doo-wop ensemble called The Shades. They recorded one forgettable track, a harmless pop tune swirling with sweet harmonies. But behind the wide-eyed teenage face, Reed was restless. He stared down the path ahead and sensed that mainstream doo-wop was too safe, too shallow for the swirling chaos in his brain. Even then, he'd begun grappling with mental health struggles, marked by anxiety and panic attacks. His younger sister recalled how he'd barricade himself in his room, unwilling to see visitors, prone to sudden outbursts. Some nights he paced the floor until dawn, eyes wild with insomnia. As he neared 16, Lou found a new coping mechanism: substances. He started with light stuff, some pot, maybe a few pills, but soon he found that the altered states they offered gave him a sense of calm, or maybe just rebellion. His parents panicked, but if Toby Reed tried to clamp down, Lou only rebelled harder. By graduation, he was an odd mix of top-tier intellect. He devoured novels, scribbled poetry, and hardcore misfit. He had a knack for infuriating teachers. One teacher recognized Reed's offbeat talent for writing. He'd produce short stories featuring twisted humor or scribble gory cartoons in his notebook. Another teacher insisted he should apply to an art school for drawing, but that was not Lou's plan. Instead, he briefly enrolled at New York University to study poetry. No one realized how quickly his psyche was unraveling. Shortly into his college stint, Reed suffered a near-psychotic break. Accounts vary, but it said he was found in a catatonic state, physically limp, psychologically absent. Desperate, his parents brought him home. A psychiatrist recommended electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. The treatment, combined with the suspicion that his parents used ECT to fix his homosexuality, left Reed both traumatized and enraged. He later described the therapy as an act of betrayal by the people who should have protected him. Though the sessions ended, he never forgave Toby for giving the doctors permission. That anger remained deep in his core, fueling an eventual torrent of lyrics that attacked suburban normalcy and parental hypocrisy. Recovered, Reed tried the Army Reserves. That ended badly. He hated the discipline, hated superiors barking orders at him. Legend says he brandished an unloaded gun at a commanding officer purely to get kicked out. Freed from that trap, he drifted back to New York, dabbling in small-time gigs as a songwriter for a minor record label. Then, a new direction came. In 1964, a pivotal year in rock and roll, Reed co-founded a band that would transform him from sullen recluse to iconic musician, the Velvet Underground. At the time, they were just a group of weird guys in the city's underground scene, forging an experimental sound that drew on Reed's fascination with taboo. He wrote lyrics about drag queens, drug dealers, S&M, the gritty underside of the city. Everyone from folk fans to pop producers was repulsed, but a certain pop art star named Andy Warhol found it fresh, dangerous, and mesmerizing. Warhol quickly latched onto the Velvet Underground, acting as their manager, promoter, and part-time patron. He introduced them to Nico, a stunning German model with a smoky voice. Warhol insisted that Nico sing on some tracks, calling the band the Velvet Underground and Nico. At first, Reed bristled. The band already had a dynamic. Did they need a leggy blonde overshadowing them? But Warhol's star power and connections were too valuable to ignore, so they took Nico in. Reed found himself flirting with her. They had a brief, intense affair that exploded in fights. She also clashed with John Cale, the band's multi-instrumentalist, and soon left. The album they recorded, The Velvet Underground and Nico, dropped in 1967 to near blank sales. But the critics who did hear it recognized it as something bizarrely new, a scandalous masterpiece. Another rumor says the album sold so little, but each buyer formed their own band afterwards. Decades later, it stands as one of the greatest rock albums ever, capturing the collision of Warhol's pop art with Reed's gritty lyricism. Yet behind that creative spark, tension brewed. Warhol's dominance vexed Reed. The manager demanded new songs constantly, pushing them to extremes that left Reed feeling used. A culminating row ended with Reed bluntly firing Warhol without even consulting the band. Warhol, known for his calm, was never so furious, calling Reed a rat. Soon after, Nico left. Then the band argued over musical direction, with John Cale wanting to keep pushing far-out experiments. Reed, ironically, wanted more melodic accessibility. Another standoff ended with Reed removing Cale from the group, telling them it was either Cale or me. By 1970, exhausted from the struggles and from poor commercial returns, Reed abruptly quit the Velvet Underground. Unceremoniously, the man who'd shaped the band left them playing a gig with a new singer. Few fans even realized it until months later. He retreated to his parents' Long Island home, taking a mundane job as a typist for his father's accounting firm, presumably wanting a break from the madness of the music scene. But that respite didn't last. By 1971, RCA offered him a solo record deal. His self-titled debut flopped. Then, in 1972, a starry-eyed David Bowie, who worshipped the Velvet Underground, invited Reed to collaborate. Bowie and guitarist Mick Ronson co-produced Reed's second album, Transformer. The synergy was electric. Out came Walk on the Wild Side, an ode to the Warhol crowd of misfits, hustlers, and drag queens. The single soared. Radio censors missed the risque references to oral sex. Suddenly, the underground hero found himself with a top 20 hit in the UK, top 20 in the US. A weird transformation indeed. Bowie tried to mold Reed into a glam star, urging him to curb his destructive habits, but their relationship soon soured. In one row, Reed smacked Bowie in the face. Bowie stormed off, the collaboration done. Meanwhile, Walk on the Wild Side introduced mainstream listeners to the taboo corners of New York's nightlife, verifying that Lou Reed was no ordinary rocker. This newfound success didn't mellow Reed's rebellious nature. He gave bizarre interviews fueling rumors about his sexuality. He was rumored to frequent the meat-packing district late at night, taking record executives on tours of seedy clubs to watch them squirm. By 1973, he shocked everyone by marrying Betty Kronstadt, a woman he had courted for years. She discovered that behind the lyrical brilliance was a man dogged by substance abuse, violence, and mood swings. Reed had an ugly streak. Sometimes he'd lash out physically at Kronstadt when drunk or high. She fought back physically, too. The tension escalated. Meanwhile, he was working on a concept album called Berlin, a dark tale of a doomed couple. Kronstadt realized to her horror that many of the details mirrored their own relationship. So she fled to the Dominican Republic in 1973 to get a 24-hour divorce. Reed pleaded with her to return, promising to clean up. She gave him a second chance, but it didn't last. He was soon back on heavy substances, and the finishing touches of Berlin came coated with bitterness. When Berlin dropped in July 1973, critics savaged it. Rolling Stone deemed it a disaster and declared Reed's career finished. He was crushed. In truth, Berlin was a dark orchestral masterpiece about heartbreak and madness, but it was so bleak that it turned listeners away. "It's my magnum opus," Reed insisted, "but it's not for the faint-hearted." The depression triggered by that album's failure only deepened his drug use. He spent 1974 drifting from gig to gig. One disastrous European festival got him fired. Then he pulled out an even bigger troll move in 1975, releasing Metal Machine Music, a double LP of pure feedback and guitar noise. People asked if it was a middle finger to the label. He coyly said no, that it was an honest expression. Then, in another breath, he might say, "Anyone who listens to all four sides is even crazier than me." Record stores got so many returns that some refused to stock it. But ironically, decades later, it's viewed as a proto-noise milestone. Typical Lou Reed, half a joke, half a serious push at sonic boundaries. In his personal life, he was also pushing boundaries. He had a relationship with a transgender woman named Rachel Humphreys in the late 70s, a bold move at a time when such relationships were rarely acknowledged publicly. This was Lou's pattern, mixing progressive personal choices with a savage, dismissive attitude that alienated friends. Even so, he recorded some decent albums in the 80s, then shocked fans by appearing in a Honda scooter ad. People screamed sellout, but he retorted that it was no different from Warhol's pop art approach, blurring lines between commerce and art. By the late 80s, Reed found new impetus, reuniting with former bandmates from the Velvet Underground after Warhol's death. But old resentments flared, and the 1993 attempted Velvet Underground reunion ended in acrimony once more. Then there was a bizarre moment in which Rolling Stone asked Reed to interview newly elected Czech President Václav Havel, who admired the Velvet Underground. The meeting was a fiasco. Reed mostly ranted about his own ideas, leaving the piece unusable. By the 90s, Reed was calmer, hooking up with performance artist Laurie Anderson. They moved in together, forging a creative, supportive bond that replaced some of the toxic relationships of Reed's past. They eventually married in 2008. The gnarly, combative Reed receded, replaced by an older musician dabbling in photography and meditation. He even performed at events that included Pope John Paul II in attendance, an unimaginable scenario for the defiant youth who once roamed the meatpacking district. But the 2000s brought new controversies. Reed's collaboration with Metallica in 2011 yielded Lulu, an album widely panned as a catastrophic misfire. Some fans scorned it as unlistenable, though Reed insisted it was high art. By that time, his health was failing. He'd long wrestled with hepatitis and diabetes, consequences of decades of substance abuse. In 2013, he underwent a liver transplant. Initially, there was a flash of improvement. He told friends he felt bigger and stronger than ever. But the optimism faded. His body rejected the transplant. On October 27, 2013, Lou Reed died at 71, a quiet departure after so many explosive, noisy chapters. Laurie Anderson recalled his final days as peaceful, describing how he still did Tai Chi in their yard, cherishing the light. Fans around the globe mourned, acknowledging that a primal creative force had slipped away. In the aftermath, tributes poured in. The city of New York dimmed lights in certain music halls. The rock world paid homage to a man who relentlessly tested boundaries, from the Velvet Underground's raw edge to Berlin's orchestral despair to Metal Machine Music's scouring noise. Each time critics or fans tried to box him in, he'd find a new way to shock or provoke, like a rebellious youth wearing an older man's body. But he was also a man with a destructive streak, marred by cruelty and drug-fueled episodes. Some ex-partners and friends recounted how he used bigotry-laced remarks or displayed bursts of violence. Others remembered him as a misunderstood genius with a sharp tongue. As with many complicated artists, the question remains whether those toxic behaviors were strategic shock tactics or genuine darkness, possibly both. His legacy stands as a collage of chaotic and breathtaking artistry. Scientists have even named a spider genus Laureate, paying tribute to his band name, the Velvet Underground, linking them to the velvet spiders. A minor planet discovered at Palomar Observatory was christened 270553 Laureate, a cosmic nod to the starmen who bridged mainstream rock and the darkest corners of the avant-garde. Ultimately, Lou Reed left a legacy that's as contradictory as it is influential. He championed everything from trans rights to sonic experimentation, while simultaneously alienating countless allies. He insisted on forging new ground, never mind if fans or bandmates hated it. He weathered mental health crises, ECT therapy, drug addiction, doomed love affairs, and the intense weight of being an icon. He feuded with Andy Warhol and David Bowie, fired bandmates and managers, made up with some decades later, but never lost the sneer. Even near his end, partnering with Metallica for Lulu, he seemed determined to keep ruffling feathers. That's the final contradiction, a man battered by personal trauma, forging groundbreaking music with a streetwise swagger. In the quiet hush after his 2013 death, fans might recall him as that menacing figure on stage, guitar strapped high, spitting out lyrics about heroin, decadence, or urban underbellies. Or they might recall the introspective balladeer who wrote Pale Blue Eyes, or the conceptual maniac behind Metal Machine Music, or the half-hero, half-villain who scrawled decadent poetry across the daily life of a savage city. In truth, he was all those things, an unrepentant shapeshifter who refused to let anyone define him. That's the real Lou Reed, a messy, mesmerizing mosaic of brilliance and gloom, forging a sonic path that future generations still trace with awe. Whenever a new kid picks up a guitar to jam on Sweet Jane or The Velvet Underground and Nico, they tap into that lineage of raw, fearless expression that Reed championed. And maybe from somewhere in the cosmic swirl, Reed's gravelly voice might crack a wry grin, reminding us he remains an enigma, an artist who refused to do anything the easy way,